Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at Jamer Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your comments and questions into the comment box. You'll see me turn my head from time to time to check for any comments or questions you have for myself or my guests. Today's guest is Kathy Gold, who went from investment banking to being a chef, and cooking is what she did with her business in the kitchen cooking school to currently president of La Dame Escoffier International, a philanthropic organization of women leaders in the beverage and hospitality industries. She has twice appeared as a featured guest on National Public Radio's Radio Times with Marty Moscone, and Chef Gold starred in an episode of CNBC's Escaping the Cube. And in 2019, she was featured on Lifetime's TV Married at First Sight. Let's bring in Kathy. Well, let's see if we can bring in Kathy. Must be, there she is.
Hi.
Hi. I just love technology so much. My fingers are always crossed when we do a show. So, other than doing this show today, what's on your plate to do?
So we are, as La Dame d'Escoffier, gearing up for a conference, which is in October, third week in October. But before that happens, there's always the daily agenda of wonderful women to talk to who want information about this, that, or the other thing, different initiatives and programs that we're working on that need daily attention, and long-term planning. So there's always something going on. And that's my public life. And then in private life, I am writing a book and carving out as much time as I possibly can.
So, dare I ask what the book's about?
Well, of course, you know that it's going to be food related, but not necessarily a cookbook. So it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, so with food as the general theme. And it's about discovery, not just in my life, but in the lives of those that I've encountered on my daily walkabouts and rides and things like that.
Okay. Let's talk about your background in growing up. Now, you and I know each other, and I think I really went back to where we met. And I think when you were with the USPC, the Personal Chefs Association.
And
the Personal Chefs Association.
Yeah, but we met at a Women Chefs and Restaurateurs conference in Rhode Island in the middle of a hurricane on Goat Island, and that's our first encounter. And then we saw each other again at the White House, as one does. And so in that 600 people where you can pick you out because everybody was wearing a white coat and you were a red one. So smart.
And well, who knows? They had those mammoth pictures of all the chefs that came in, and I was the only one that had a colored coat. That was a hot day.
That was a very hot day.
Right, and they had containers of water. Michelle Obama spoke. We looked in the garden at the White House that she had put together, and everybody was Lydia Bastianich. You name celebrity chefs, they were all there along with me. Lucky them.
All of us, our 600 nearest and dearest friends. But I remember that day, it was fantastic. And that was Chefs Move to Schools, which was a First Lady Michelle Obama's initiative. And we were then paired with schools who were looking to create some sort of food program in their systems. I always thought with that I would be paired with an inner city school system, maybe in Camden, which is close to where I was, but I was paired with, in my mind, was the most unlikely match, which was a Friends school. And their school program for lunches were already so phenomenal. I made 2 tweaks on their menus, and that was it. But what we did do was plant a garden. And because it's New Jersey and most of what comes up out of the ground is when kids are off from school, we planted a salsa garden. And so we had herbs and some peppers and things like that that we were able to use while the kids were still in school. So that was fun. It was interesting.
That's fabulous. I thought it had been through at some point Van Spices that we had also met or interacted because the Personal Chefs Association came down. Maybe it was the Doms, I don't know, came down to Vans for a tour. And people, I say La Dames, they have 44 chapters now across the United States, Canada, France, Italy, Mexico, United Kingdom. Am I missing anything?
No, you got it. You said Italy, right? So we have the
Yes.
5 international chapters, and then the rest are scattered across the US. So we have about 3,000 members at this point. There might be more.
Okay.
We just had inductions.
Well, let me go back. I know you, but I don't really know you. Tell me about where you grew up, what your family table was like, and let's go from there.
I grew up in southern New Jersey for the most part, born in Georgia when my father was a surgeon in the Army. My parents are New Yorkers, and as soon as he was out of the Army, they hightailed it back up north as fast as they could and settled in the Philadelphia area. And we say in my family, we come from 5 generations of no one cooking, really. But that doesn't mean that we didn't dine. We ate out in restaurants all of the time. And that was an interesting experience because my mother had the repertoire that one does if you're cooking, and maybe 5 things that were on rotation in our house. And that's the way we lived our lives. I have 2 sisters, and we all say that we learned to cook for self-preservation and so that we would have something fabulous on the table. But my mother was entrepreneurial, which was unusual in those days. And she was not at home. She was working and had several different, very successful businesses. And so we had that sort of different kind of life than what I saw in my friends' homes.
Yeah. College, GW?
Yes, Chinese language and literature, and a minor in Chinese and Japanese art.
Okay. How did going into investment banking, how did you go from Chinese history and art to investment banking?
I worked for a bit when I was in DC teaching English to Chinese school children. It didn't last long. It was through the Sino-Soviet Institute, which was a great, great space to be in. So it was half Chinese language, half Russian language. We called it the Tower of Babel because that's what you heard when you exited the elevator into our landing. But really was looking for something that was a little bit more sustainable. And this looked like a really interesting and worthwhile position with a lot of longevity, a lot of different avenues to travel into. So I began as a stockbroker and then moved into private investment banking.
Okay.
And I was in there that was about a 20-year position. So that was my first job. I'm on my 3rd now, by the way.
Well, you've done more, but you've dabbled in, you're a leader, because I know with Personal Chefs, you headed up whatever your local chapter was, La Dame d'Escoffier. Again, you headed up the Philadelphia chapter for how many years?
I think, well, the terms are 2 years, and so the board positions that I had were 8 years in the Philadelphia chapter. And then I've been on the international board for about that same amount of time.
And I remember you inviting me up, and I should tell people, Kathy, you went to school. Did you not go to school in Canada?
Went to Le Cordon Bleu, yes. And that is actually where I ran into Vans. That's my connection to Vans, because she was doing a tasting during that conference. And a few of us decided to go visit her. We were just a gathering of, maybe there were 5 of us in Baltimore, and stumbled upon Dara
Right.
Bunjon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how that happened with Anne.
Yeah. She was quite a personality, Ann Wilder. Okay, so you started doing personal chef. Then you opened up a cooking school in Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is what, like a 15-minute subway ride to Philadelphia. This was your home territory. And you opened that, what, in 2007? What were your goals with opening the In the Kitchen cooking school?
And this really came as just an outreach from my position and my job and my business as a personal and private chef. And people would naturally say, can you cater this party? Which I did. And then the largest party I catered was 1,000 people, which was a lot, but it was really fun and quite a learning experience. And then I was invited to give a demonstration at a cooking school. It wasn't really, it was a kitchen studio where they had, it was like Williams Sonoma and Sur La Table, et cetera. And that was the beginning of my cooking school. It was one of those moments where this is so much fun. If I do this, I don't have to work anymore. And that's that golden moment where what you're doing and getting paid for does not seem like work. And so found a way to open a cooking school. I was in a design studio, kind of retrofitted using the equipment there, and then really needed to build out my own space, which is what I did in Haddonfield. So I wanted a place where I could teach and have fun and create a sense of community, and it grew from there. So from 12 people with a hands-on cooking class, it became team building events for 60 people. Sometimes I needed larger space and would rent a colleague's space for 100 people or so, but all hands on, because that's where the fun is, having your hands in the food and tasting it and seeing it and really creating something. And that's what it was. I had a boutique in the front of the studio in Haddonfield, and that was another just organic creation when I would be using something in a cooking class and people would say, oh my gosh, this is the best food I've ever tasted. Where can I get that equipment to make this? Where can I get that ingredient? And so I started importing the things that I was using. And that's how a store happened. And that was fun too. I loved retail, although I had no background in it really. Another learning moment.
Well, that's how we grow, isn't it? Each day, hopefully you learn something new and you go beyond. I learned about Aga stoves, and everybody's going, what is an Aga stove? And I will explain a bit, and Kathy will jump in. If you remember the show, The Two Fat Ladies cooking show, it is a stove that has a central heat source that is on constantly, and each oven has a preset temperature, 100 degrees, 200 degrees, 300 degrees, 400 degrees. 2 burners on the top that have lids, because you don't want to be touching it. When you lift the lid on one, it was 800 degrees. You lift the lid on the second one, it was 400 degrees. You could boil water in like 8 minutes, and there was a warming tray, and there was much more. So Kathy gets me to come up to Haddonfield, New Jersey, and I don't know whether it was personal chefs or what we were doing that day, but the girl who was the regional director for Augustos was there and did a demonstration. I filmed it, put it up on YouTube, and it has had 16,000 views. And if you want to see it, just go to YouTube and type in Dara Bunjon. There's a lot of strange videos that I've shot, but you can find it there. I don't know, what it was you invited me up or whether it was what the goal was, but I started doing AGA demonstrations in Maryland. And that was like a little sideline of mine. Just
Well, that's how it happened. I was asked by AGA And at that point, I was their executive chef doing demonstrations in their showroom, which mysteriously was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, just down the road from me. And it was AGA Refrigeration and a refrigerator company in a huge, enormous warehouse where they had all of the equipment on display, and they used that to demonstrate and sell to other dealers, not to individuals. But they asked me if I knew anybody in the Baltimore area who would be interested in doing demonstrations. And I said, I know just the person. And that's how it came out. And it was fun. It was really fun. It's such a fascinating, gigantic thing to have in your home. Weighs about 2,000 pounds. I had 3 of them in the kitchen because when August sold Victory Refrigeration and was moving their headquarters to Toronto, I was doing a demonstration in the studio, and just jokingly I said, wouldn't it be a lot less expensive to ship all this 2 miles down the road, which was where my studio was, than all the way up to Toronto? And they said, you know, chef, you're right. And so I inherited the equipment. I was so spoiled. I had the big AGA cooker, which is what you see in all the cozy mysteries that they're always talking about, the AGAs. Then I had a newer version of that. And then I had one in the front in the boutique. So spoiled. I was using it as a prop for product and merchandising. But really, that was a fun day. And when I sold my building, which was about 2 years ago, I left all of that equipment there. It was part of the sale. I didn't have to even think about moving that or where it would go, for that matter. And I don't know if it's still there or not. I have a feeling it is not.
Well, I remember, just to tell people, at that time, the AGA stove, you said, weighed 2,000 pounds. A lot of times when it came into the home, they had to reinforce the floor to hold it. Now, it could be generated by electric or by gas as a central source. And at that time, the big oven, the double that we just discussed, I think was starting at $16,000.
Yes, $16,000 to about $20,000. Or you can buy a small car, one or the other. It's like, decide what you want. But the unique thing about AGA is, in those days, I think most of them are modern, other than overseas and the diehards. It cooks by stored radiant heat rather than an exposed food flame anywhere. So very safe piece of equipment. And in fact, that's the history of it, is to be as safe a piece of equipment as possible and still cook at those enormous temperatures, 500 degrees at the top of the oven. And as you mentioned, one of the cooktop plates, 800 degrees. And 2 minutes is how long it would take to boil water, a gallon of water. So very, very fast and fun, and quite a conversation piece.
I want to get back to Les Dames, because that's what you're about now and have been for a long time. It was founded in 1976 by Carol Brook. And tell us more about Les Dames and its motto, or what it tries to achieve.
Right.
Please.
So Carol Brock had been the Sunday food editor at the New York Post and really wanted to create an organization of professional women who were not just at the top of their professions, but were also philanthropic and looking to have outreach into the community. And she gathered enough people to have 5 original chapters, which gave her the charter to become Les Dames d'Escoffier International. And that was the New York chapter, which remains our largest chapter, the Washington, D.C. chapter, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Dallas. And so my own chapter, which is Philadelphia, is part of the original 5. And the objective, the mission statement is philanthropy, outreach, community, uplift, scholarship. And so we have collectively given over $10 million in scholarships and grants and community outreach over the years. That number, of course, continues to grow. We have, as you mentioned early on, the chapters across the US and overseas, and in Mexico and British Columbia. And all of the chapters have that same mission, which is to support their communities and to create programming where we can collectively uplift all that we can, and that's what we're doing.
You have different awards. You recently announced the La Dame's Legacy Award. Tell us about that and tell us about who recently received it.
Well, it's the Legacy Awards, which are just incredibly generously underwritten by the Julia Child Foundation. And Julia Child, by the way, is one of our original members of La Dame d'Escoffier International, is a program run by the different chapters in the different locations where they create a program where it is specific to a specific journey, we'll say. So we've had experiences in journalism, in supply chain. We had one this summer in food advocacy, which was a new experience, and that was the Washington, D.C. chapter. And winemaking, we're hoping to add olive growing if we can match the seasons correctly, because that takes place primarily in October, which is when we're busy doing other things, and we usually have had the experiences completed by September before we come to conference. And so there are a lot of different avenues. Philadelphia for a couple of years did an entrepreneurial program where you had the entire array of businesses that DOMs are involved with. So it could be a chef, a restaurateur, journalism, whatever it happens to be in one spot. And it is by essay and an application process. There is a panel of judges who go through everything. We generally have anywhere from 20 to 35 or possibly more applications. And so it's a serious project. And then we send everybody out to have something that's going to impact their lives and that they can take with them as they're on their own professional journey.
So the Legacy Award for 2024, who was that?
Well, they're in the middle of it right now. There are 5 people who have won this. It's not just one. Usually we have 6 or 5, and we have I should tell you the truth, I don't know right now their names in particular, but we follow their journeys on social media as they go.
Yeah. Okay, I picked the wrong. Is it the MFK Fisher Prize?
MFK Fisher is being reimagined, and we're working on that right now. And that's been an award that we've given over the years.
Okay, Carla Hall just got an award from you. What award was that?
That's another award. Carla Hall. So Carla Hall is our new Grande Dame. And so that is an award that we've given over the years. Other recipients have been Julia Child, Joe Nathan, another DC representative. And it's for somebody in our community or the community at large who exemplifies what DOMs are about, which is those same missions of philanthropy and outreach and collaborative working and learning together. We also have Woman of Purpose, if we're talking about awards, and that is in conjunction with Yeti, and that's every other year as well.
Okay. What are you looking to accomplish with your tenure as president? Because you're 2023, 2024. Is there an ultimate goal during your tenure as president?
It's making sure that La Dame's is a thriving, sustainable organization, because the work that we do is so powerful and so meaningful in general, and shoring up our programs, creating new initiatives, reimagining the ones that we have, and communicating more with every facet of their membership. So whether it's the chapter president, whether it's just the general memberships at large, we want to make sure that everyone has access to the information that they need to create a thriving chapter.
Right. And just to let people know, it's all come up in the notes, but if you want to learn about La Dame's, the website is ldei.org. ldei.org. And they actually have a magazine called The Feast that you might find fascinating to review. How do people who are not involved with the DOMs get involved with La Dame's?
The chapters, almost all chapters have community events, and they almost all of them have a website that you can join and be on their newsletter so that you can see what's coming up on their calendar. The chapters have on their websites usually a space where you can apply if you would like to become a member of the chapter. And they'll tell on each website they'll have different criteria, but for the most part it's your tenure in your job and what it is that you're hoping to find and what you offer and what you're hoping to receive from membership. We have also, of course, Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on all the social media platforms, and you'll see a lot of what we're doing there as well.
Right, and those links have come up in the website here for JMOR as we're talking live. You mentioned Washington, D.C. and Joe Nathan. I think you just had a very great experience, didn't you? You went to spend the night at Joe Nathan's house.
And ended up in a pajama party with Joe Nathan and Alice Waters, which was really so much fun. And Alice was in Washington because she was receiving, we mentioned earlier, the Julia Child Foundation Award, which is a $5,000 award so she can continue her program. So that was really fun. Did not expect that. And I was there for a scholarship fundraising gala at the French Embassy that was being held by the chapter in Washington, D.C., and Joan was going to that.
Yeah.
So a lot of fun. I think that I've never been so starstruck in my life. So that was really fun.
And Alice Waters, if you don't know anything about food, then you might not know who Alice Waters is, but you know anything about food, Alice Waters, Joe Nathan, all these people are fabulous. And Alice Waters is there for her work with the Edible Schoolyard. We've covered quite a bit, and I'm sure we could chat some more, but I am going to get back to the final questions and let you get back to the valuable work that you do. If you wake up tomorrow with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
I would be a concert pianist. I dreamed about it last night. Someone came to me and asked me to fill in, just step in, because somebody couldn't show up at an orchestra event. And I said, do you want the Shostakovich? Do you want the Rachmaninoff? Or do you want Beethoven? This is my dream. So it's telling me something. That was so funny. So random.
Yeah. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it would be to change my major. As much as I loved what I did with the Chinese language and with the art and the culture, I think I would have been better served with a degree in business or law.
Okay, major in one and minor in the other. Right, right. Ultimate culinary fail.
I did have a major crash and burn, as we say, which is pretty literal. It was during a cooking class, and it was a class where I was teaching people how to cook in caramel sauce, which is a Vietnamese technique, and turned my head for a second and ended up, well, it seemed like a second, it was probably 5 minutes, left my students unattended watching the pot, which when I got back to it was hardened into a black cakey tar. So that was interesting. Always have a plan B. But we use these things as teaching moments, so it was okay.
What not to do. Folks, students, this is what I wanted you to learn. You can't take your eyes off of that pot.
When you have caramel on the stovetop, there's no turning away.
No. What's the best bite you've had all week?
Oh, that's an easy one. I had my first tomato sandwich. It sounds so plain, but that's what it was. And I go to New Jersey still to my old farm stand where I've been going for 30 years. They grow the best tomatoes. And just little flaky Malden. Sorry, no Dukes, no Hellmann's. It's vegan mayonnaise for me. That's okay, get over it. And squishy white bread, farmhouse white.
So are you vegetarian or vegan?
Vegan.
Vegan, okay. What are two musts that you must have in your refrigerator?
Pretty specifically, a Dijon mustard from Edmond Fayot, which I used to stock in my boutique because I couldn't be without it. So figured may as well be buying cases of it wholesale and selling it because it's so perfect. I want everyone to experience it, but I also had it. And something spicy, hot sauce. So maybe, well, always Cholula, always Sriracha, although it's a little difficult to find right now. Maybe some gochujang, something really hot and fiery, Calabrian chili peppers.
Oh, sounds sizzling.
And champagne. That's a third one.
That's the third one. Okay. All right. My final question is, what didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
I talked about my first career, which was investment banking, and my second career, which was being a chef and owning a cooking school. Now, really trying to figure out what my third career is, which is writing and editing, and the time that I'll, after October, be able to devote to that and see where that goes.
Terrific. And where is this year's conference for Les Dames going to be?
We will be in Phoenix, Arizona, beginning on October 19th through the 18th through the 20th.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you, Miss Kathy. It's great reconnecting. And as we discussed on the phone a little ways back, we can talk forever because we just know so many people in common and we both love food. So all the best with Les Dames and conference and being president. And then all the good fortune for your third career, which is going to be writing and editing and your book that you're writing. And maybe you'll come back on and we'll talk about that when it gets published.
Great to see you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Kathy. Okay, everyone, let me fill you in. Next week's guest, plural, will be Matthew Scales. He's Seafood Marketing Director, and April Bloomfield, Agricultural Marketing Specialist, both with the Maryland Department of Agriculture. What does eating local really mean and who benefits? On-farm experiences, summertime recipes, and restaurants who are dedicated to serving locally grown and sourced food will make for a lively discussion. We hope that you'll join us next week in that conversation. As always, I want you to feel free to reach out to me. My email is food@jmoreliving.com. My Instagram is @DaraCooks, and on Facebook, you can also find the Food Enthusiast. I run a page there on that. All shows are immediately archived in video form and are on JMOR's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. May your plates always remain full, and I look forward to seeing you next week.